course. And again, that meal was brought to us again by the Fayette County Farm Bureau and the Elk and Southern Conservation Districts, and we appreciate that. And the whole program was brought to us by the Farm Credits, which Abraham's over there. I introduced him a little bit earlier. But again, I'm glad you made it out. Feel free to keep eating. And then when you get finished, we'll put them in the trash there, and we'll go from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass a kind of a sign-in sheet down through here. Use a pencil that you have there. You don't need to pass one along with it. Just pass it on down to each table and sign in. And one thing I'm trying to capture here also is some emails if you have. That way we can look at putting that through. We still do things traditional through my offices. We do bulk mailings. I still like to work like that, and when I work through a bulk rate, I can put those out for like 19 cents per person to get them out and still reach a lot of you all that don't use the email, and so still very effective for that. So I do appreciate if you'll just put that in there and add that also to the list. Again, on your tables, I'm going to steal one here. There's some pieces of papers that I want to make you aware of. Again, the agenda is on one of these white ones, kind of what we're going to work through tonight. And on the back of it is all our organizations that focus on our areas that we live in that you may need to contact. And again, that's the USDA offices, Farm Service agencies, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and then the conservation districts, and then all the agents around. We all work as a team. If you can't get a hold of me, feel free to call one of those other individuals in the surrounding county, and they'll help you where they can also. Our emails and everything are there with that. The next thing that I kind of want to go back to is that agenda, and we have ag organization updates, and so the folks had some things come up tonight, and they couldn't be here from the conservation districts and the Farm Service Agency and the Natural Resource Conservation, but they've got some programming out there, folks, that you need to look into, and I'll just give you a little bit of rundown of some things they have. The Natural Resource Conservation Service. They do some programs that they call EQIP, E-Q-I-P, which stands for Environmental Quality Incentive Programs. If you're interested in doing some things on your property to improve the environment along those lines, they can help. For instance, water developments, if you need to put in some water to your livestock. They do some fencing if you need to divide up some places so you can rotate the animals through your property to take advantage of your grazing. They also do some forestry practices. That is, they will come out, and a forester will come out that is through those folks and do what they call some timber stand improvement. And they'll come through and mark some trees that you don't need, and you go through and cut them, some grapevines, spray some invasive species. They also have some programs for you high tunnel folks. Maybe you're interested in doing some production of some vegetable crops. They will work with you on these high tunnels. They design, develop, you implement. Everything is designed to the T. And let me tell you, when they design something, it is to the utmost highest level. So you can rest assured that these folks, these engineers and these conservationists are working to put you something on the ground that's not going to be junk. It's going to work. The other thing is they have what they call wildlife habitat improvement programs. So if you're interested in improving some habitat for some wildlife, they have some practices to do that, looking at some creatures that are maybe getting some challenges from some pressure outside. So those are some programs they offer. The Farm Service Agency are folks that help with programs, natural disasters when they come forth. They look at some payment programs. Some of you all maybe worked in this program last year if you had livestock. The White House put down some money, Congress put down some money to help with some prices to compensate some livestock producers. Also, they have indemnity programs. So if you have something that comes through and affects a crop, whether it be hay or vegetables or livestock, they have some programs that they'll work with you on that because of a natural disaster. Now, the conservation districts. These are a state-run organization. They have board of directors. Is there any board of directors from either county here on the conservation districts? I don't think there is. They do some programs like the old lime and fertilizers that all you all have talked about for so long that you wanted. If you have a current soil sample, you can work with these folks to be ranked to apply some lime and fertilizer. They'll cost share with you on that. They do some water developments. They also do some fencing. They do a little more lax than the federal agency on that. They also have equipment you can rent. Lime spreaders, no-till drills, post drivers. Can't think of anything else, but they have a lot of equipment that you can use. The Southern has a crew that you can hire to come out and do some work. So you don't feel up to it. You've got a pond you want to build. They got a whole crew that knows how to do that. They can help you with that. So those are a little bit about the organization's updates. And there's a gentleman with us tonight, and I've got to let him speak because he's been a friend of the Farm Bureau as long as I've been in the county, especially the Fayette County Farm Bureau, and he's down there fighting for us at Charleston, and that's our delegate Tom Fast. Tom, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I'm sure you have something you could say. Huh? You just started session, right?
Yeah, we started. We had actually. We were calling a special session yesterday. Our regular session starts tomorrow. If you can, tune in to the State of the State address by the governor tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. There's going to be some really good announcements made for the state of West Virginia. We're really excited about that. That's why we passed some legislation yesterday and today. And I appreciate the opportunity and the invitation to be here. I'm all ears.
Yep. Thanks. And Tom's always been all ears. He listens to the Farm Bureau, what they have to say, and then takes that and makes his decision however he sees. But he does keep that ear open to the Farm Bureau, and we appreciate that, Tom. We consider him a friend down there. So with that, I am going to turn it over tonight to a really good friend of mine. Aaron and I went to college together at WVU. Aaron always had an interest in agriculture, a native of Greenbrier County, and he has made it farming. I don't know of any off-the-farm jobs, except maybe when he started. The first collection I had is he got back down here and was working on a dairy in Greenbrier County, but soon went off on his own and probably had some interest there on that. So Aaron's going to talk about what him and his family are doing down there. He is an outside-the-box thinker. Okay, so be prepared and be all ears. And then again, like I said in the beginning, I've got you spaced out. If you feel more comfortable coming a little closer so you can see or hear, feel free to do that. Or if you want to get further, go ahead. It's one of those enter at your own risk tonight. But again, thanks for coming, and I hope you learned something tonight. We'll follow up there on the end. So, Aaron, Hemlock.
Good evening. I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you for sponsorship and other people that are here. This is my family, but see they're here in live action tonight, so I forwarded here. So this is my lovely wife, Tara. This is our youngest, Emery. We have Graham, Elaine, and Andrew here in the back. And they are my greatest accomplishment. I'm married well. And hey, I know you. Yeah, very good. Yeah, so my greatest accomplishment and the thing I'm most proud of is my family. But I put them on here not to tell you that, but to tell you that we kind of work together. We do things together, and we're well, I am kind of lost and helpless without them. It is important right now, if you cannot hear or can't see, get where you can, because I've done a poor job of preparation. My pictures are smaller than what I thought they were going to be, and I've got some notes here for you. So if you need to get somewhere, please do. If you need to repeat something, stop me and ask me. If you have any questions, let's take those as we go. I prefer informal. Let's have a conversation. The other thing I'm here to tell you, I'm not here to talk to you about what we know. I'm here to talk to you about what we're learning. It's important that you understand that, because I am not an expert in anything. I was asked to come out tonight to talk to you about multi-species grazing, and can it work or will it work for you? Apologize for the picture, but I need you to look at this picture and tell me, how many species do you see here? Now, there's a little bit of trickery in this question. There's an obvious answer, but tonight, for the purpose of our presentation, I want to get you up about 50,000 feet and let's think things a little bigger picture, okay? How many species do we see here? No.
At least 3.
Okay, how many? Anybody more than 3? I'm going to forward just a little bit. Let's look again. This is a closer view. Same group. You don't have to get nervous. There's no wrong answer except what my wife said. Okay, just so you know. Okay, there are 3 species of stock in here, but that's not what I'm wanting you to look at. There's an ecosystem here. We have grasses, trees, livestock, dogs, and insects, things below the ground or underground livestock. These are all spider webs. So I'm more proud of, that picture than I am of these 2 pictures. And the reason being, these are indicative of soil health and things we're doing from a grazing standpoint. This picture was taken in October, and if you look, that rolls all the way back. That field is 40 acres of spider web, just like that, as thick as, like a bad Halloween nightmare. Actually, we have an intern who hates spiders. He cannot go out with me when it's like this. So we're really proud of that. But I'm trying to get you to think from the terms of tonight's presentation, it's not about a sheep, a cow, or a dog. It's about our whole system. And why that's important, so there was a question asked to me earlier this afternoon about, hey, I've got a weed problem, and what are we going to do about that? So what we don't do is we do not use sides. So the definition of that is a person or substance that kills, or the act of killing. And what I mean by that is we typically don't spray anything. We've learned to control some things with grazing, but it's important when we make the changes in our mindset that we manage for what we want, not for what you don't. So what do I mean by that? We maybe I should say me, but we as farmers tend to go out and we see a patch of thistle. So if we have 40-acre farm and there's a patch of thistle, if you put all those thistles together, they probably wouldn't cover half of this room, but we manage for that thistle. We don't manage for what we want on the rest of the farm. And that's a very small part of what we do. So it's important to think tonight about manage for what we want, not for what we don't. We're a lot more influential in what we can do with our time. So profit or loss. This is important to look at tonight as well. Can we plan for a profit? Oh, I didn't clue you in. If you do not communicate with me, this is going to be a horrible night for everybody. Okay, so wake up. Let's go. Can we plan for profit? Yes. We can make a plan for profit. So what can we plan for? I like to look at this list of plan for what we can. Plan for what we can have an influence on. Can we control markets? No. But can we make a marketing plan? Yes, we can control that. Are we able to control the weather? No. But can we build a drought plan? We can. We can build resiliency through there. I wrote this in here because this was important to me. Brian mentioned that we do make our living from farming. We do not have all farm jobs, but we've been close to broke now twice. So I look at drought two ways. There's a weather drought, and then there's a financial drought. So we like to try to have a plan in place for both of those. Profit, we can make a plan for profit. So when we look at cost for a budget every year, we should go ahead and build in a profit. Profit is a cost of doing business. Succession, can we plan for succession to a next generation? Yes, we can do that. One thing I want you to see here, and I just read this a couple of weeks ago, if you look at the word there, succession, there cannot be succession without success. I never thought about that like that before, but that is in that word. I didn't make that up. So focus on the correct things. Our circle of influence, not our circle of concern. Is anyone, are you guys familiar with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? So you are? Okay. Anybody need me to go through that before I go on? Would you like? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to real quickly walk through this. So we're going to use our list that's up here. And tell me, in a day's time, go around the room, just throw some things out for me here, off of that list. Okay, the things that we normally worry about on our farms in a day's time. Can you give me something? Markets. Okay. Can we control the market? All right, so that's more in our concern than our influence. What else? Weather? Okay, we can't control that though, right? So that's also in our concern. What else?
Predators.
Predators. Can we control those? Not very easily. So where do we want that? Predators. What else?
Theft.
What?
Theft. Stealing.
Theft. I heard that right? No one's ever said that before. You should move, I think. Okay, what else?
Genetics.
Genetics? Can we control those?
Are we using the right one?
Or can we control that?
Yes.
You're right. So that will go in our influence. What else?
Yield. Yield.
Yield? Can we control yield?
Sure.
All right, I'm going to write a few things off of here too. So we can't control the market, but we can build a plan. Okay? And the drought, we can build a plan. So when we do this, we look at this thing here. This is where most people spend most of their time in their life worrying about things they can't control over. So when they do that, the circle of things that they can influence is really small. So if we change our attitude a little bit, and by the way, that brings me to the only really thing we can control is our attitude. So you know, we are in control of our response. So when we look at moving these things from this other page into the things we can influence, like our planning, the drought, marketing, etc., etc., this circle gets larger. So we now have more control in what we're doing in our lives, and we're spending a more effective amount of time with the things that we can control. It's important that we started to look at our businesses that way from a resiliency standpoint, not wasting time and emotions and things that we have no control over. This is going to be hard for you to see, and I apologize. It showed up really nicely last night. So this is a farm that we had rested. So we biblically rested. You know what biblically rested means? We give it 1 year off. So 1 in 7, you're supposed to give your farm a rest. We don't typically do that anymore. But we biblically rested the back of this farm. And to be correct, I don't rest the whole farm every year. I pick 1/7 and rest a piece of it. And then we came in the next year. And do you see the difference? There's a right and a left here. I'll put the line in if that helps you. Can you see a difference in the field at all? Will that help, Brian? Does that help? Yeah. All right. Wait a minute. I want to go back and take the line off now. Can you see a difference? All right. All right. So what happened here was we went on the right with a multi-species grazing project. So on the right we had a herd of goats, we had a large flock of dry ewes and stockers, and we grazed the right-hand side. On the left, we just had cattle only. There was a pretty dramatic difference of what we saw after that graze period in terms of how they cleaned that property up. So there was no spray, there was no bush hogging or clipping there. That's just what the stock had done. So I gotta go back and forth. I'm sorry for that, guys. Just leave it 1 second. So are we managing for the right things? So we typically hear, yeah, kill that one back. Hey, Brian. Yeah. How's that? Can we still see? So what we call coffee shop talk. So we'll meet at the gas station. Oh, I wean 700-pound calves. You know, we want bragging rights. We want the belt buckle. And as my belly starts to come over, I need a cattleman's belt rather than, you know, so a smaller belt buckle. So it's important that we change the way we're thinking. We need to manage for dollars. Our homes or businesses utilize dollars, not big weaning plates. This can take a shift in our thinking. How do we add dollars per acre on a limited land base? One thing I hear when I go out is, I only have 50 acres. I only have 200 acres. I don't live in an area where we can expand readily. So how do we add more dollars to what we're doing? Can we improve our grazing? That's a good way to get, you know, more land. If we do a better job with our grazing, we have more land. Can we improve our soil? Through better grazing, we improve our soil to have better utilization by our plants and animals. And can we add multi-species? And back to this point here, multi-species does not, I'm not here to talk about just a sheep and a goat. Multi-species are our community. Plants, insects, animals, everything that's going on there. And how much potential value does this add to your bottom line if we can change the way we're doing things? So keys to profit in a business. I want to run over this real quick. This is really important. So there's only 3 things any business can do to increase profitability. There's only 3 things. The first thing we can do is we can increase turnover. Can anyone tell me what turnover is? It's written on the page here if you don't know. It is a measure of time and units through the business in a given amount of time. So as an example, a cow-calf business, other than a horse, is pretty much the slowest turn time in a livestock business. So from date of conception to date of sale is typically 18 months. That's how long it takes that money to travel through that business. A stocker is typically a quicker turn. So we may be looking spring to fall, so maybe a 6-month. A ewe or a goat, their gestation shorter, weaning rate also closer. So how quickly, it's a measure of how quick we turn money over in our business. So how can we increase that? We can increase our stocking rate. We can change our enterprise mix, which means we add something else to it. We can change our species, but we can also do better at grazing management. And I'm going to circle this one because it's important, and we're going to get back to it here in just a minute. Better grazing management will also increase our turnover. So the second thing we can do, and I got those out of order, we can look at our gross margin per unit. Gross margin per unit I'm going to define as dollars after our direct costs. So those are things like we do to each unit on the farm. They don't change over the big picture, they change only by units added. So that may be a tag or a vaccine, things of that nature, things we do to every animal. Maybe a mineral cost, feed cost. So the only way to really change these in livestock operations are to reduce those costs, take something out, move our calving, lambing, kidding closer to nature. We need to be calving and lambing on green grass and get some of the hay out of our businesses. What's the #1 cost in a cow-calf operation in the United States? Fed feed, yep. You know what #2 is? Depreciation. Andrew, tell us about appreciation and depreciation, please. Louder. That's correct. If you didn't hear my son, before you have depreciation, you must have appreciation. That is not what we're taught. I did not learn that in school, but it's true. I mean, if you don't have an appreciating curve to stock, they typically just depreciate. And that's the other interesting thing about cows and calves in the United States. Average age for a cow to leave a herd in the United States, I didn't say that right. How many calves does the average cow in the United States have before she leaves? Who said 6? Close. 3.
Depends on how many twins she has.
Average cow has 3. And that's the common answer you get. If she's 6 to 10, 12 years old, she has that many calves. She does not, ladies and gentlemen. So depreciation is the number 2 cost. Marketing. We can change our marketing. We can do a little bit better with our marketing at a different time. Times of the year will influence price. And again, and I'm going to circle this one, there's a theme coming here, better grazing management. The last one on our list here is overheads. Overheads are defined pretty much as what we typically like to call assets and liabilities, or I refer to them as stuff. So I'm going to ask my kids here again to help me out. Laney, what's an asset? An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. What's a liability, Graham? Takes money out of your pocket. So we're taught on a balance sheet that we list our liabilities and our assets, and they're basically stuff. But if you went home tonight and took your asset list and your liability list and changed that to which things are putting money in your pocket and taking it out, the list is not going to be the same. And I encourage you to do that. Assets and liabilities, I'll cover this a little bit more. Overhead. So this is a cow. She's a nice black cow, average size. And I borrowed this slide. I have to give credit here. This is not my slide. Kevin Shaver made this slide. So I have to give him credit there. But it was really interesting what he did. So most of us in the farming world, we like things, right? So some of us may want a saddle horse. So we'll get a saddle horse, and we want to put up our own hay. So we got to have all of our hay equipment. And then we got to have a big truck and trailer. You know, we got to drive to the meeting tonight in a big truck. We have to have a UTV, and not just a little one. We got to have one that's 4 doors with a cab on it. Okay, we got to have that to run a few cows. What happens to this cow is when we start to add all these things that this cow is carrying around to pay for, she gets smaller. So as we continue to add these things to this poor old cow, she's smaller and smaller and smaller. It'd be like me carrying Brian around, right? Other Brian, not you. Brian Wickline, sorry. Yeah. So grazing principles. I want to talk about this real quick. I was taught that we managed livestock. And this ties back to where I was going from the beginning. If we manage our grass, our livestock will pretty much take care of themselves. And that's what they're meant to do. So grazing principles, there's 5 of them here. Manage the plant with adequate rest. So if you look at a leaf on a plant and it's bitten off, and if this leaf is not fully regrown to its triangular tip on the end of it, you're back on that plant way too early. Okay? It takes grass to grow grass. Does anyone know why they call them leaves? Because you're supposed to leave something. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Didn't see your hand. Manage the animal. Short grace periods. So if we're back on a paddock, so 3 to 7 days is about as long as she needs, or he needs to be on that paddock before it's moved. It's important so they don't get this principle number 2 is their second bite here. Now, I really want to spend some time on number 2 here because I hear people talk about rotational grazing. They don't want to do it, it's too labor intensive, or it didn't go well. 2 of the main reasons that it usually doesn't go well when you investigate this is they'll go to 8 to 10 paddocks or less. It takes 8 to 10 paddocks to stop overgrazing. But what we find right there at that point is animal performance actually goes down. So we need 14 to 16 paddocks for improved performance. But at that rate, we still have not gotten far enough to get our rotation far enough ahead of our livestock for key performance. So then we look at principle 3, high stock density and donkey days. I'm going to spend some time on donkey days here because this is important. Alan Savory wrote in his book, there was a guy named Pedro who had a donkey and he walked it down to the river every day for water. So what happened where that donkey walked every day? What? Right, you have a what now? A path. That's exactly right. So down to the river, he had did so much damage over a year that there's no grass, it's X wide, and there's nothing growing there. What would have happened if they took 365 donkeys down to the river one day and didn't come back for 364 days? What would it look like then? It would what? That's correct. So what we would see is we would have a massive disturbance like a buffalo herd going over the plains, and then we would have this amazing lush regrowth, and it would change your species over time. So this is, as an example, and I'm sorry if you can't see this, but this is a representative 100-acre pasture with one donkey. That's the red dot, is a donkey, okay? No one seems to get offended if you use a donkey. If I used a horse or a cow, I didn't do something right. So a donkey. Can we be overgrazed and understocked with one donkey in 100 acres? Yes. What we will find are plants that are undergrazed and the plants that are overgrazed. So we now take and divide. So the first step people will make is we'll get 8 paddocks and we'll put that donkey in there. So this is a great improvement. We're going to prevent overgrazing by going to 8 paddocks. Okay? Can you guys see? Okay. So I'm trying to stay back as best I can. So we then move to a 16 paddock situation because that's for improved animal performance. That's where we need to be. So we still have our donkey here. The donkey's going to rotate through here. So I did this one other time, and someone from West Virginia said, my farm ain't square. All right? So to fix that, I drew a West Virginia farm. Okay? And so I put all these lines through it. And I got distracted in counting, but there are somewhere between 24 and 28 paddocks on this farm, representative farm. The point is, every paddock does not have to be the same. You measure the forages there and graze accordingly. But what happens when you get a paddock division this large is you essentially get a farm for free. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that, Tara? That's correct. We can essentially double our stocking rate. So going back to a comment I made a while ago, I hear all the time when I'm out, hey, I don't have enough land, or I can't do this with it. You have more than you know if you're willing to change how you're using it. The question I heard last night was, well, yeah, but I don't have water out there. So when we get a farm now, number one thing we do is water. It's the number one payback of anything we do. Fence is number 2. But, so if we're at $100 an acre or less on a water system, where can you buy another acre of land contingent to yours for $100 an acre? And I guarantee you if there was a farm next door for $100 an acre, you'd probably be jumping on that. But I get resistance when I say $100 an acre in water. I have a hard time understanding that. So, again, I failed miserably. I drew stock on here. So all those dots that you cannot see, I apologize, are stock. So when we move to an ultra high density thing, so we have goats around, they're the red dots, you can't see that. But that's what we're trying to do, is get that paddock covered in a day's time, 2 days time. That way manure, feces, things like that are spread very tightly. And we get a weed control response. So I get asked a lot about weeds. Weeds are not weeds, weeds are forbs, okay? Forbs are minerals, and they're free. They're also very, very high in sugars and energy. And if you're moving animals, number 4 here, in a high density thing like this is called the herd effect. It's also, they have a predator response. What that means, I wish we weren't in COVID, because what I would have you do is we'd all stand up and get closer together. And I'm going to get to a point when you're close to your neighbor that you're just about as comfortable as you can stand to be. It's like being in church. So then you want to back off a little bit. So there's a fine line there between pressure and negative pressure. But what we see when we do this is every animal in that mob then goes back to a reset naturally. If Lulabelle here is going to take that bite, I'm going to eat it. They will eat everything in their sight. They will eat, I'll show you some weeds and stuff that we'll go through here in a minute, but they will eat all kinds of broadleaf shrubs. They'll clean it up. And so to do that, we have to get them tight enough and move them fast enough to reset their mentality. And yes, that can be done. The fifth one is carrying capacity. So carrying capacity is the definition is basically we're looking at supply and demand. Carrying capacity is our supply of grass, and our stocking rate is going to be our demand. How many animals do we have to utilize that? And then we make a mathematical calculation. It's managing inventory. So again, manage for what we want, not what we don't want. So I also drew, this is my farm, okay, West Virginia farm. So I've got some cows over here and some sheep over here. This is the fence, so I've got sheep out, you know, as they typically are. This is a typical set stock farm. And what we're going to find there is there's no more dots that are there, but they're so spread out, it takes more time and labor to check stock, find stock. You're checking acres of fence versus small paddocks. You're spending more of your resources out and about. So in a lesson of stock density here, is this a heavy stock density or a light?
Pretty thin to me.
Okay, are we overgrazed or undergrazed?
Pretty thin.
Okay. Yep, so we're pretty much overgrazed and there's not much stock out here. Can we see these pictures? Okay, on the left here, I wrote up here it's pounds or heads, okay? It's not pounds or heads. We need to start thinking there in terms of pounds. When we look at stock density, we're looking 250 to 500,000 pounds an acre. Okay, that's a lot of pounds. So how we do that is just make them tight, get them tight. On the right-hand side here, this is an example of a flurry of cattle and sheep together. I do like multi-species together, if you can manage it. Multi-species and multi-money. So what do I mean by that? It's important to know yourself, what you're willing to do on your farm and what you're not willing to do. Don't do things you're not comfortable with if you're not willing to learn. The proper rotation with multi-species animals can decrease parasites. So cows are dead-end hosts for some of the sheep parasites, and sheep are some dead-end hosts for cattle parasites. So they work very, very well together. There's an increase in forage consumption and types. So I want to draw this out for you here. So if you look on a daily basis of what small ruminants and a cow like to eat. So a cow, I drew this, it wasn't my kids, I can't blame that. So a cow, in her daily diet, she likes 70% grass, okay? If we look at sheep, they like 50%, and goats are down to 30%. But goats like 60% of their diet to be shrubs. So find a place where they can fit on your farm and utilize the resources we have. And this takes a lot of the sides, the sprays and things like that, out of our farms. Money we don't have to pay. These animals will utilize these. And we did a little example here. Let's just say we had a 25 cow herd that we were working with, and we wanted to expand, but we really don't have the land to do it. So what did calves sell for last fall, a weaned calf? Dollars a head, can you give me that? Dollars a head? Somebody help me out. I'm sorry, I can't hear. $1.60, so on a 5 week, so that's $800. Okay, $800 times, we wean 24 of them, one of them died. Is that fair to say? Okay, so 800 times 20 is 16,000 times 4 is 20,000 bucks. Did I do that right? Somebody check me? 19,200. All right, so I was close. One calf off. There we go. There we go. I turned him into my lender. So what if we get, so by the way, you can add a sheep for free to a cow-calf unit. Does everyone understand what I mean by that? So she does not change your forage demand adding a sheep and 1 goat per cow-calf unit. But in this example, we did 25 ewes, 10 goats. We didn't want too many enterprises having babies, so we ran the goats through here as stockers. We put 50 pounds apiece on those, and we did 1.5 lambs. So when we looked at that, what happened is 25 ewes, we weaned 37.5 lambs, 60 pounds each at $2.50 a pound. And that brought back another $5,625. 10 goats gained 500 pounds together. So that's an additional $7,125 of revenue, which is what percent of your $19,200? I say 30, but that's... So we added an additional 30% of revenue, but by not changing our forage demands from our farms. I think that's pretty impressive. Yeah, it would take an additional, I think we did math, 10 to 12 cows to do that. And most of the time we don't have the extra land base to run the extra cows. So again, I apologize, this is hard to see, but what's interesting, so this shrub bush here in the front, you can see where the goats have taken that thing down and they eat up into that bush. Right behind it, right in there, you see those multiflora rose bushes? Their eat off as high as the sheep heads will go. It's harder to see in this picture. This is the north end of the South Bend Graham moving the goats away, but see the shrub here? I mean, they've just completely eat the foliage off of that. So the broadleaf weeds, by the way, I hear all the time that animals will not eat all these weeds. That is not true. We found they gotta be ripe. So when you go to the garden, do you pick sweet corn off before it has an ear? No. Do you eat a lot of fried green tomatoes? You might eat a few, but you want a nice red tomato. You want it ripe, correct? We have found livestock will tear these weeds to pieces when they're ripe. This is stickweed, Tara? No, it's not iron. Stickweed, they have just defoliated that thing. Thistle, everyone says they won't eat thistle. They eat that as high as they can reach it. That's burdock. You can see I really love burdock. Calcium, burdock. Thistles are as well, by the way. There's an interesting book out there, it's called Weeds and What They Tell. It will talk to you about a lot of forbs and the things that they mine out of the ground. But if you go for, there's a lady, Nicole Masters, talks about it. Weeds are our fingerprints on our farms, what we've done and not done. And these weeds will tell you a story if you know how to speak their language. Does anyone know what that weed is? Dude, wait a minute. Okay, I need to qualify. I am not telling you to graze poison hemlock. Don't graze it. We're clear? Am I covered? So this is sheep grazing poison hemlock. And so this summer we had sheep and they were defoliating the poison hemlock from down there to high as they could reach. Interestingly enough, they did not touch this plant until it started to flower. We had, I don't know if it was a fluke, we called every specialist that we could think of and everybody was upset, and the common answer I got was, we'll pray for you. But we fortunately did not lose any stock. And I'm not telling you to graze that, but it was an interesting thing about, makes me wonder, are animals smarter than we think they are? They know when something is what it is. This is the goat groove, I call it. Again, I apologize for a bad picture, but right out there on the end of that limb, there's a goat that walked that tree to get up into that thing to eat. So I really like watching those dudes eat. Are there any questions at this point? The final thing I wanted to touch on here is terrain matters. So if you have a lower type terrain, not real steep, that's a great place for cows. They just find their groove and their happiness there. Sheep do pretty well with some terrain, but steep terrain, goats really thrive there. And the final thing I have for you is, if you want some good reading from some experts who actually know what they're talking about, these are 2 books I highly recommend. And that's what I have for you this evening. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to tell you some sort of lie. Yes, sir.
What type of
most of our paddock divisions are done with poly wire. So we have hair sheet. So what we do is we break them, train them, I should say, for single strand poly wire. And so we take some time to train them with we'll typically start, if they're unruly, with poly net, and then we go to a 2 strand on the inside of that, and then we get them down to 1 strand because they've got to move. This came up last night, so I need to draw this. So our cattle posts, when we move them on single strand, is right about this height. It's right about here. So our sheep wire is relative to forage. Relative to forage, okay? So if the grass is here, our sheep wire needs to be 4 to 6 inches above the grass. So if the grass is this tall, the wire is a little above it. If the grass is short, it's 4 to 6 inches. It's important for the single wire for that to be kind of about that 4 to 6 inches there. The other thing we're doing, I'm going to cover this while we're talking about fence, if that's all right. I got a lot of questions yesterday. We love a woven wire fence boundary, but you can't always afford that. And a lot of the farms we have already have smooth wire or high tensile, and we're having trouble with that with sheep and goats. So this is ugly, and people tend to not like it, but here's what we're doing. In other words, everyone likes a nice straight fence, would you agree? You know, it's pleasing, right? To me, those things are ugly now. Order is chaos. So what we've gone to do, so on our old fence, so we would have, say, 7 strands going up one side, okay? So now what we do for sheep and guard dog control is we stagger wires. So our first wire is going to come up here about 8 inches, and then we go to the back of the post and put one about 12 inches. Then we come up here about 16 and up here about 24. Now if you're looking down this fence, it is dog ugly, let me tell you. But it's been very effective because if the animal goes to move through, they can't run straight through. They typically have to do one of these curved deals and they'll get bit and then it'll back them off. That's been very, very effective.
All 4 hot frames.
The bottom one is not hot. No, yeah, so these 3 are hot, and if it's going to be a cattle fence, we've got one up here, and we typically do not run that hot unless cattle are on it because it's the #1 wire to get hit by lightning. So we only usually hook that one if we've got, you know, big cattle in it, that kind of thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that's right. 5 wires. Dog bane, milkweed. You ask about sandbriars, horse nettle. It's important, back to the manage for what you want. Excuse me, when animals are trained to move and with that predation effect, let's just say I have a spot, say this table right here is full of sandbriar or horse nettle, okay? And it does spread rhizomically, I believe, that's correct. Hemp dogbane does as well, Canada thistle. Excuse me. So what we'll do, because they're used to being moved, we'll put a little fence around that area there we have a problem in, and we'll run them in real tight there for about an hour and let them trample and tear that up. They'll eat a good bit of it. But what we'll see is in 60, 90 days, you've drastically reduced that stand, and then come back to it and do that again. Because if you stress it enough, you're going to knock it back. But it also comes back about the picture I showed you of it being right. There's times where they will tear those things up and times that they won't touch them.
You make your own hay?
No, we do not make our own hay. We used to make our own hay. We sold our hay business 3 years ago now. Yep. We buy in about 100 rolls of hay a year. 75 of those rolls are fed typically to, we feed our own lambs out, so they're on confinement. Once they're 60 pounds or so, we take them to 60 to 75 pounds in confinement, and that hay is mostly fed there. We fed 13 rolls last year, and in 2 weeks I've fed 40 this year. So, but yeah.
And that's where I have an issue, like dog bane in the hayfield outside of it. I mean, I put those back. I use crossbow. I have a neighbor that I take him every year, but he can't take him to certain fields because of the dog moving in down there.
Can you get some stock on it? Can you put some poly wire up? I mean, it's really effective because it's so like I didn't bring this picture, but I wish I would have. We see a lot of blackberry canes, rose bushes, that kind of thing will grow up, and see stock won't go through that. And a couple years ago, I watched a Greg Judy video where he was just rolling out some hay on some rose bushes, and it was supposedly killing them. That guy's smoking something. All right, that's the way I looked at it. So 2 winters ago, we went into some really heavy, dense blackberry canes and pulled feed through there. So we just set our feed right there, round bales, that kind of thing. And if I took a picture, and I have this picture, I should put it in here, and I could draw a red line through it, and I wouldn't have to. There's blackberry canes, and there's grass. Where we created disturbance, see, those plants are growing to tell you, get off of me. Or like your hemp dog main is typically thriving where there's no animal pressure. You do the same thing. You typically mow and fertilize it probably, and they need pressure. I was asked this last night. I am not out to eliminate weeds. I want weeds on my farm. They are minerals, they're energy. Now what I don't want is just constant, complete stands where something won't graze them. That's actually what brought us to sheep a couple years ago. After an organic farming practice, we did a large tillage practice and we had cocklebur like crazy. And so we brought the sheep in to manage cocklebur. That's what got us started in sheep.
What about
Goats. Sheep to here, but a goat's pretty effective. They will literally climb them and just break limbs out of them.
If you cut them, the sheep will never let them go there.
That is true. That is true. If you go out and do a mechanical cut, you want to stand up and say that?
If you cut autumn olives or multiple rows just to the ground, and the next spring when they come up, the sheep will never let them mature.
Yeah, they don't. They'll keep them mowed down after that. Yes, dear. I didn't hear that. Yeah, in the fence. That's right. Yeah. If you want to talk to birds, you talk to that guy right over there, Grant. He'll tell you how to track your pheasant. Anything else I can help you with? Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your kind attention, and no one fell asleep that I saw. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Aaron. A lot of good information, something to think in the think tank, huh? I want to make you aware of a couple more things. There's another white piece of paper there. And so we're going to take a break with dinner meetings in February, and these are going to be webinars. So look down through there. There's some big interest in carbon sequestration. And I think you ought to kind of pay attention to that and learn a little more about it. There's a lot of big companies that are looking at being carbon free in their practices of what they're doing, and they are interested in woodlands and working with landowners in dealing on those carbons. So it's something to pay a little more attention to if you can tune into that one. The Zoom address is at the bottom. So every Thursday night at 7 in February, these 4 topics will be there if you're of interest to tune in with Zoom.
The next frontier.
The next frontier. Yep, you're right. And in March, we'll come back and we'll have a dinner meeting here on high tunnels. Now, on the back of this sheet is an email that I received from our specialist, Ed Rayburn. And you all have heard rumors about fertilizer prices, and some of you probably have a concern of that, but they're kind of going to be a little bit expensive this year if you're interested in doing that. So what I'm going to say is, this email here talks about, Ed talks about adding the nitrogen source to your ground through clovers. And what I want to tell you about is we have been under a misconception of when we should frost seed these clovers on the grounds. So clovers are round seed. So when you throw it on the ground through freeze and thaw, it'll work in. Now, if we took a flat seed like orchard grass or fescue or a brome and threw that out there, you've got to get it incorporated into the soil. So any round seed, a lot of times through freeze and thaw, will work in the ground. And so that's what a clover is. And so what Ed is illustrating here in this chart is when we need to be doing this in our area is like the 1st to the 15th of February of getting that clover out there on the ground. And so even the latter part of January, and that gives it enough time to get worked in there and it'll start to do some germination. So a lot of times I've had producers say, well, we frost seeded clover and we were just so disappointed with our stand. Nothing came. Well, the problem is we were putting that in there on a March snow. And we'd missed that window by 30 to 45 days. And that's why we weren't seeing germination. So the take home on this email of what Ed's laying out is we need to get that on there early, the end of January, the 1st of February, if you're doing some frost seeding. And so what I'm saying is clover will fixate nitrogen gases out of the air through the nodules on their roots, and we'll put that in the ground for you. And so that's one less thing that you have to buy as far as nitrogen fertilizer. With that said, this is the year for you to pull some soil samples. And so we have that service through the university, our soil testing lab. If you can get those pulled and get them up there now, we've got a turnaround of 14 days now. We're faster with those. And it can tell you exactly what nutrients you need. Instead of just doing your shotgun approach of the fertilized mixes that you're putting on there, is let that sample come back and tell you what your species needs, whether you're doing grass or vegetables or pasture or some sort of crop. We can now match that to that specific crop, and then you can buy those ingredients of specific of what you need to add to your ground. This is a time to do that, so with high fertilizer costs. So look into that, get those soil samples pulled. Yes, sir. Yeah, so the way you, all it is now is it's a form that you fill out, and on the back of that is a crop code. So if you're growing, let's just use vegetables for example, and relate this back to pasture hay. Now you have a crop code on the back of that form to where we can put it right down to what the tomatoes will need, what the green beans will need, what the potatoes will need. We can be specific, blueberries, and then we can relay that back. If you want to put the crop code for pasture, put that in there and we can get that right back to you. Now these forms are available online. Just type in WVU Soil Testing Lab or swing by our offices in Fayette County and we have those forms printed off for you. You can pick them up from 8 to 4. Or in Nicholas County, they're outside my door on Main Street that you can pick up 24 hours a day. I have an outside box there. So you can swing by and pick those forms up at any point if you can't print them off of the web address. If you would be so kind for me, this orange sheet, if you would fill this out for me tonight about the speaker, Aaron Hemlock, we take those and we give those back to our sponsors so we can keep the funding coming to complete these, to make these happen. So if you'll fill those out for me, I'd greatly appreciate it. Appreciate your time again tonight. If you'll just red up your table and throw it away, help me stack the tables on the tray back here in your chairs, and we'll have a safe journey home. Check out those webinars if you can. Call us, email us if you've got any questions, and we'll get back to you just as soon as we can if you need some help with anything. Thanks for your time, everybody, tonight.